Xatu is not too good and not too bad. It is the best psychic berry specialist in the game right now, but it isn't necessarily the best berry producer if we include legendaries. Welcome back to another Pokemon Sleep video, it's Bro Vinny here. Today is the debut of Natu and Xatu, and Rainanex has got all of the information for us, including its stats and its ingredient and skill rate. Let's take a look at Xatu's stats. So Xatu is a psychic type berry specialist, and it is a snoozing type. Its main skill is ingredient magnet, with a pretty average skill trigger and ingredient proc rate. Its speed isn't too bad, especially if you compare to the other berry specialist that is Mushana. It definitely is faster than Mushana, and it has the ingredient list: egg, cacao, and apples. Let's get straight into comparing Xatu with the other berry specialists for psychic types that we currently have. We've always kind of known that Mushana isn't that great, so it is actually a good thing that we've got Xatu now to give us a bit more choice. And because of its faster speed, as you can see here, thankfully Xatu does beat Mushana by just over 10% in berry production. So if you use Xatu with berry finding compared to a Mushana with berry finding, you're going to see about 10% more power production from its berries. Even ingredient is a bit higher in total strength compared to Mushana. Where they differ significantly is in their skill. They both have one evolution, so you get to level 2 skill for free, but Xatu gets Ingredient Magnet S and Mushana gets Dream Shard Magnet S. We can't really compare these two skills, so there's not much to be said in this page. But what we can do is look at Xatu by itself compared to other Ingredient Magnet Pokemon. Interestingly, Xatu actually has the highest Ingredient Magnet trigger rate compared to every other berry specialist that also does Ingredient Magnet. So that's Butterfree, Steelix, Vigoroth, Walrein. This title used to be held by Steelix, but Xatu very slightly beats out Steelix in this category. Of course, neither are a match against the true skill specialists for Ingredient Magnet, but of course we have to compare like for like. They are berry specialists, and indeed Xatu is slightly better there. But that doesn't mean Xatu is better than Steelix in any way, because if I give berry finding to all of these Pokemon, and Steelix still remains among one of the best berry specialists, especially as a generalist. If you look at the berry output, Steelix beats Xatu by a whopping 10% in berry production. So that very slight difference in Ingredient Magnet isn't going to be the point of investing Xatu. And while we're looking at berry strength, how does Xatu compare to other Lakeside Pokemon? Well, I've set up a scenario here comparing all of the Lakeside Pokemon with Xatu. So all the main powerhouses except Cresselia for Grass, Psychic, and Fighting types. As I said before, Xatu beats Mushana. Xatu actually very slightly loses out to Meganium, and we already know from our Meganium comparison with Sceptile because of its skill that Meganium loses out to Sceptile. So between Xatu and Meganium, unless you need those ingredients, Meganium is actually slightly better. Of course, once again, we can't really compare different skills very easily because Meganium is Charge Strength S, whereas Xatu is Ingredient Magnet S. As a general rule of thumb, if you need ingredients or if your ingredient bag is quite low and you need to restock with Ingredient Magnet, then Xatu would be the way to go, whereas Meganium would be the way to go if your ingredient bag is quite full despite cooking all your meals. Needless to say then, Sceptile is still the king of berry production, especially at Lapis Lakeside. Compared to Primeape, Xatu is slightly better in total strength, as well as berry strength. But of course, Blaziken has overtaken the top spot for fighting berries, so if we bring Blaziken into the picture, we can see that, well, Xatu slightly loses out to Blaziken in terms of its berry production. So while Xatu is the best psychic berry producer in berry specialist category, it is quite mid in terms of Lakeside berry producers. So if you're someone who already has really great options for Lakeside like Blaziken, Sceptile, Meganium, Primeape, then you don't really have any urgent need for Xatu. Could you potentially need it for Psychic Berry main berry type in Expert mode? So the main argument for catching a good Xatu would be when you really need to cover that Psychic Berry typing, because say you're at Green Grass Expert mode and your main favorite berry is Psychic type, then Xatu is one of your better choices. Having said that, and while this is an expensive option, there is still Cresselia. Cresselia is the best for berry production among the Psychic types. This is not a fair comparison because Natu is much easier to catch, Munna is much easier to catch compared to Cresselia. Trying to catch a Cresselia that has say all the skill triggers and berry finding and helping bonus is not going to be easy. Maybe just simply not possible. But just to give you an idea of how much of a difference a good Cresselia is compared to a good Xatu or Mushana, here are the numbers. Do be careful that when you're using production comparison in Rain and X for Cresselia, it assumes that Cresselia is operating at a max Psychic team. So there are 4 Psychic team members on its team. Unless you specify under advanced options that your team is not a full Psychic team. We'll take a look at that in a moment. So there's going to be some overestimation here, but let's take a look at it anyway. So I've set the skill level for Cresselia at level 6. And again, this is not a video about Cresselia, but it's just to highlight the differences between Cresselia's berry production to Xatu and Mushana. At its maximum potential, if the whole team is Psychic Berry typing and they're different species, just the skill alone is already more berries than either Xatu or Mushana, and by a long margin at that. Cresselia easily beating out Xatu by over 30% in berry production just from the skill alone, and then there's the actual berries that it normally produces. Meaning, if you combine everything and a good Cresselia has, say, berry finding, we're looking at 100% more berries than, so double that of Xatu's productions, which is absolutely insane. But of course, to operate a full Psychic team, you would then consider using Xatu to make Cresselia better, using Mushana to make Cresselia better. Let's take a look at some situations where you don't have a full Psychic team. So let's say you only have one team member that is a Psychic type, and that's Xatu. Even then, if you look at the numbers, a berry finding Cresselia, which produces this amount of berries, plus its skill production from its one team member buff, still in total beats Xatu and Mushana individually. So you only need one team member with Cresselia for it to beat Xatu, which is crazy. But of course you gotta use a Xatu or a Mushana so that Cresselia can have that output. And it just keeps getting better. Let's say you use Xatu and Mushana in the team with Cresselia, the number keeps creeping up. And on top of that, you get some team healing as well, which is a powerful skill. So while Xatu might seem a bit mid at first, if you combine it with the fact that you can use it in a team with Cresselia with more flexibility of choice, you can choose between Mushana or Xatu or even other Psychic types like Gardevoir, Espeon, Mr. Mime. You can choose between them based on what ingredients or skills you need and still have Cresselia operating at its maximum potential, is what makes having more choices for Psychic types powerful. So while giving us Xatu by itself isn't necessarily a crazy power creep, it does, generally speaking, give Cresselia more flexibility and therefore more power. So if you've actually caught a good Cresselia and you plan on utilizing a good Psychic team for a main Psychic Berry Expert week, then this is an important addition to your team. And even if you don't have a good Cresselia, maybe just get a good Xatu anyway in case you do land on a main favorite berry for Expert mode in the future. As for Lakeside, I don't really see the necessity of using Xatu. Thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and tell me whether you think Xatu is good or not too good.